One day Gideon and all his men got up early and camped beside Harrod's Spring. The Midianite camp was in the valley to the north of them by Moreh Hill.
Gideon, the chosen leader of the Israelites, positioned his men strategically, preparing for the battle that lay ahead.
The men you have are too many for me to give them victory over the Midianites. They might think that they had won by themselves and so give me no credit. Announce to the people, anyone who is afraid should go back home, and we will stay here at Mount Gilead.
Following the Lord's command, 22,000 men left, leaving only 10,000 behind.
You still have too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will separate them for you there. If I tell you a man should go with you, he will go. If I tell you a man should not go with you, he will not go.
Gideon obeyed, leading his men to the water for the next test.
Separate everyone who laps up the water with his tongue like a dog from everyone who gets down on his knees to drink.
There were 300 men who scooped up water in their hands and lapped it. All the others got down on their knees to drink.
I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites with the 300 men who lapped the water. Tell everyone else to go home.
With the final selection made, Gideon was left with a small but valiant force, ready to face the Midianites.
So Gideon sent all the Israelites home except the 300 who kept all the supplies and trumpets. The Midianite camp was below them in the valley.
That night the Lord commanded Gideon,
Get up and attack the camp. I am giving you victory over it.
So Gideon and his servant Purah went down to the edge of the enemy camp.
The Midianites, the Amalekites, and the desert tribesmen were spread out in the valley like a swarm of locusts, and they had as many camels as there are grains of sand on the seashore.
I dreamed that a loaf of barley bread rolled into our camp and hit a tent. The tent collapsed and lay flat on the ground. Narrator: When Gideon arrived, he heard a man telling a friend about a dream. It's the sword of the Israelite, Gideon son of Joash. It can't mean anything else. God has given him victory over Midian and our whole army. Narrator: His friend replied.
When Gideon heard about the man's dream and what it meant, he fell to his knees and worshipped the Lord. Then he went back to the Israelite camp and said,
Get up! The Lord is giving you victory over the Midianite army.
He divided his 300 men into 3 groups and gave each man a trumpet and a jar with a torch inside it. He told them,
When I get to the edge of the camp, watch me and do what I do. When my group and I blow our trumpets, then you blow yours all around the camp and shout, For the Lord and for Gideon!
Gideon and his 100 men came to the edge of the camp a while before midnight, just after the guard had been changed. Then they blew the trumpets and broke the jars they were holding, and the other 2 groups did the same. They all held the torches in their left hands, the trumpets in their right, and shouted,
A sword for the Lord and for Gideon.
Every man stood in his place around the camp, and the whole enemy army ran away yelling. While Gideon's men were blowing their trumpets, the Lord made the enemy troops attack each other with their swords. They ran towards Zarethan as far as Beth Shittah, as far as the town of Abel-Meholah near Tabbath. Then men from the tribes of Naphtali, Asher, and both parts of Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers through all the hill country of Ephraim to say,
Come down and fight the Midianites. Hold the Jordan River and the streams as far as Beth-barah to keep the Midianites from crossing them.
The men of Ephraim were called together, and they held the Jordan River and the streams as far as Beth-barah. They captured the 2 Midianite chiefs, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at Oreb Rock, and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. They continued to pursue the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon, who was now east of the Jordan.